People aren't broken, and there's always a way forward. I know because I've lived it. I left school at 14, one of 9 kids, and I joined the RAF at 16. 30 years followed in sales and hospitality, all the while believing there was a version of my life I couldn't quite reach. In my mid-40s, I found hypnotherapy, and I discovered that belief was wrong. I retrained. I built Inspired to Change, and at 60, I came out of King's College London with an MSc in Psychology and Neuroscience of Mental Health. The same year, I found out I had dyslexia and ADHD. I'm Gary Johannes, solution-focused hypnotherapist, founder of Inspired to Change, and a senior lecturer at CPHT. This podcast is everything that comes from all of that. One condition per episode. What's going on? What's keeping it going? And what actually helps? If you find it useful, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. So, if you've lived with it, you'll know how isolating it is. Not just the symptoms, but how it quietly shapes what you eat, where you go, whether you say yes to things. This episode is about what's actually happening in the gut, in the brain, and between the two. Because that connection is the key to understanding IBS. I'll leave you with one thing you can take away today. Now let's get into it. So what is IBS? Irritable bowel syndrome is a condition that affects how the bowel and the digestive system works. The symptoms vary: abdominal pain, bloating, cramping, diarrhea, constipation, or in some cases both at different times. They range from mildly uncomfortable to debilitating, and they come and go in a way that makes life feel unpredictable and hard to plan around. Around 1 in 10 to 15 people have it. It's twice as common in women as men, and it most often shows up between the ages of 20 and 40, although it can come and go throughout a person's life. So here's the thing that surprises people. IBS is not a disease of the gut in a way that Crohn's disease or colitis are. When you look at the bowel of someone with IBS, there's no visible damage or inflammation. The gut looks fine, but it doesn't function fine. And that distinction between structure and function is exactly where the brain comes in. Because what's happening with IBS is a breakdown in communication between the gut and the brain. The gut and the brain are in constant two-way conversation. There's a direct neural highway between them called the gut-brain axis, and it runs in both directions. The brain influences how the gut functions, and what's happening in the gut sends signals back to the brain. It's a constant feedback loop. In a healthy system, that communication is smooth and coordinated. Food moves through, signals are processed, and the gut does its job without making a big fuss about it. But in IBS, that communication gets disrupted. The gut becomes hypersensitive. Normal digestive sensations, things most people's bodies process and ignore, get amplified. The gut registers them as pain or urgency or discomfort when there's no structural reason for it. It's not making things up. It's genuinely generating those signals. But the sensitivity has been turned up way too high, higher than it needs to be. And here's why stress matters so much. The brain's threat response, the fight or flight system we've talked about throughout this series, directly affects gut function. When the primitive brain senses danger, it redirects resources. Digestion is not a priority when the brain thinks you might need to run. Blood flow changes. Gut mobility changes, the whole system gets disrupted. For people with IBS, stress doesn't just make them feel anxious, it literally changes how their gut is working in that moment. And nearly 60% of IBS sufferers identify stress as one of their main triggers. That's not a coincidence. That's the gut-brain axis doing exactly what it's designed to do. It just does it at the wrong times and to the wrong degree. So what causes it in the first place? There's no single answer. IBS is one of those conditions that develops through a combination of factors rather than one clear cause. For some people, it starts after a gut infection. The gut infection clears, but the gut's nervous system stays on high alert. It learned that the gut environment is dangerous, and it doesn't easily forget that. For others, it builds up gradually through chronic stress. The nervous system is in a prolonged state of activation, and over time the gut starts to reflect that. The sensitivity creeps up without any obvious trigger event. Hormonal changes play a role, which helps explain why IBS is more common in women and why symptoms often fluctuate with the menstrual cycle. Altered gut bacteria, food intolerances, certain medications, all of these can contribute. And conditions like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome can also increase the likelihood of developing IBS. And then there's a psychological dimension, which isn't separate from the physical. Psychological distress directly influences IBS development and progression. Anxiety and depression are significantly more common in people with IBS than in the general population. Not because IBS is imaginary, it absolutely isn't, but because the gut and the brain are part of the same system. What happens in one affects the other, always. So what's keeping it going? Because this is where IBS often becomes self-sustaining in a way that makes it hard to get out of without some targeted help. Anxiety about symptoms is one of the biggest drivers. You have a flare-up, it's uncomfortable and unpredictable, so you start to worry about when the next one will come. That worry activates the stress response. The stress response affects gut function, which makes flares more likely, which increases the anxiety. Round it goes. Avoidance maintains it. Stopping eating certain foods, avoiding social situations, not going somewhere because you're not sure about the toilets. All of these feel like sensible precautions, but they also reinforce a message that the gut can't be trusted. The nervous system learns this is dangerous, we need to be vigilant, and the sensitivity stays high. The anticipation of symptoms can be enough to trigger them. People with IBS often find that just thinking about eating out, or a long journey, or an important meeting is enough to start the gut reacting. That's not a weakness. That's the gut-brain axis doing what it does. The brain signals threat, the gut responds. Sleep disruptions feed into it. Poor sleep amplifies the stress response, increases pain sensitivity throughout the body, and makes the gut more reactive. And IBS symptoms can make it harder to sleep, another cycle that feeds itself. So what's actually happening? Working with your GP or gastroenterologist is part of the picture. Getting a proper diagnosis, ruling out other conditions, understanding whether there are specific dietary triggers for you. That's the foundation. Maintaining regular meals, managing caffeine, gradually increasing fibre. These practical steps matter. But the evidence is also very clear that addressing the gut-brain connection directly is essential for lasting improvement. And this is where the results that inspire the change are remarkable. Gut-directed hypnotherapy for IBS has a success rate of up to 95% in classic IBS cases. That's not a fringe claim. It's recognised by NICE, the body that sets clinical guidelines for the NHS, which recommends hypnotherapy as a treatment option for IBS that hasn't responded to other approaches. So what does it actually do? In trance, the prefrontal cortex, the rational, reasoning part of the brain, stays engaged and in control. The nervous system shifts out of high alert. And in that calm state, we can work directly with the gut-brain axis. Through gut-directed hypnotherapy, we help the brain send different signals to the digestive system. We reduce the hypersensitivity that's been driving the symptoms. We essentially recalibrate the gut's threat response, not by talking about what went wrong, but by working with the subconscious to establish a new, calmer baseline. People are often skeptical before they experience this. It sounds unlikely that working with the mind could change how the gut functions. But that skepticism is based on thinking of the gut as a purely physical organ, separate from the brain. It isn't. It's part of the same interconnected system. When the brain comes down, the gut gets the message. That's not alternative medicine. That's the gut-brain axis, and it works in both directions. More than 60% of IBS sufferers see long-term improvement after hypnotherapy. Most people begin to notice significant change after 8 to 10 sessions. The 3 pillars matter here too. Positive interaction. Real connection and warmth directly calms the nervous system, which directly benefits the gut. Each small moment of real connection reduces the stress response that's feeding the sensitivity. Positive action. Gentle, regular movement helps gut mobility and reduces the chronic activation that keeps IBS going. And positive thinking. Building trust in the body's ability to function. Reducing the catathriving around symptoms begin to break the anxiety cycle that keeps the whole thing going. Sleep underpins all of it. A calmer, better rested nervous system is a less reactive gut. It really is that connected. Before I close, one thing you can take away today. The next time you notice IBS symptoms starting, that familiar tightening, that sense that things are about to go wrong, try this. Before the symptoms escalate, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Longer out than in. 5 counts in, 7 counts out. This isn't just a distraction technique. It's directly activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, which is the direct opposite of fight or flight response that's winding the gut up. You're sending a signal straight down the gut-brain axis. We're safe. Stand down. It won't fix IBS on its own, but it does something real in the moment. And practice consistently, it starts to shift the nervous system's baseline. Less reactive overall, less reactive gut. Try it today. Notice what happens. If you've been dealing with IBS for a long time and feel like you've tried everything, I want you to hear this clearly. The gut-brain connection is real. It's well evidenced, and working with it directly gets results that dietary changes and medication alone often can't achieve. You don't have to keep planning everything around your gut. Understanding what's going on is where it starts. You've just done that, and quietly, this is a step forward. If this episode has helped, please do hit subscribe and leave us a review if you can. It really helps more people find the podcast. Every episode, one condition, the same honest lens. What's going on? What's keeping it going? And what actually helps? There's a lot more to come. And if you'd like to find out whether Inspired to Change can help you with IBS, we have a nationwide network of solution-focused hypnotherapists across the UK. You can find your nearest therapist, read more about how we work, and book a free initial consultation at inspiredtochange.biz. The link is in the description below. See you on the next one.